Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024 to order. I'd like to remind all participants that this meeting will be recorded for public access and broadcast. And with that, I am going to call for a motion for the adoption of the agenda. I just want to point out that one of our speakers this evening, Charlie Burrell, is not able to make it. So he will not be on the agenda this evening. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda? Moved by Councillor O'Blina, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded. Motion carried. I'll remind everyone that there's conflict of interest forms in the middle of the table. If you have a conflict this evening, please fill it out and pass it to the clerk stating the reason why. With that, then I move on to item number 4, the adoption of minutes for the regular council meeting for September 9th, 2024. So moved by Deputy Mayor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded. Motion carried. I'll now ask for the adoption of the minutes for the committee of the whole meeting from September the 23rd, 2024. So moved by Councillor O'Blina, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded. Motion carried. Moving on to item number 5, consent agenda items. You would have all received that in your package. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gallant. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded. Motion carried. We'll move on to item number 6, public and administrative presentations. And we have Connie Colpitz with the Cemeteries and Cemeteries Act.
Oh, that was
Connie, how are you?
Thank you for the welcome. I'm sorry that Katie's not here tonight. She doesn't come, does she? Regularly? Okay.
You're just gonna have to meet her and then give her a part 2.
Well, as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of Salisbury's habitation and so on, and this being Churches and Cemeteries Month, we thought it most timely to make council aware that the Pioneer Cemetery, established in 1800, making it 224 years old. And according to Margaret Crossway, the earliest headstone she could find was 1823. But there are records that there's other people buried there before that, okay? And of course, that's where Joseph Crandall is buried, and also a relative of our friend Mr. Crosby here, Samuel Wilmot. Anyway, cemeteries are a very important part of our heritage. And the preservation of these historic places is left to the present and future generations. I can't read that, but I'll have to go by my cemeteries in the Salisbury area. Grieving families have entrusted you and I to protect their loved ones' monuments and memories. Cemeteries throughout the province have fallen into neglect, and many have been abandoned. And you could almost say that the Pioneer Cemetery on the back road has been abandoned, other than the fact that the Salisbury Baptist Church does send somebody over to mow it on occasion. But as far as upkeep and maintenance, nothing. They just drive their tractor over the stones and away they go. And others are struggling to find the volunteers and resources necessary to maintain their own cemetery. The Pioneer Cemetery, as you know, is on the corner of the Salisbury Back Road and the Grub Road. Is a perfect example of this neglect. Joseph Crandall's life is well documented, and his monument is the biggest one there and stands erect, except it's got a little bit of a wobble in it. But others are not so fortunate. arrangements are made to mow, but numerous tombstones. And when I say numerous, there's in that whole place of over almost 100 burials. I'll bet you that there's not two tombstones standing erect. Everything broken, fallen into the ground. And records for many cemeteries have been lost. Thanks to Meg Crossway and others, research has been done to try to collect the information on these gravestones. And some of you in the room have local knowledge. And if you're associated with the cemetery and you have knowledge of a person or persons in that, I know I'm called upon at Colpitts to please tell me who's buried here. And that sort of dates me as to age. Anyway, there is no government department or department in the province that acts as a repository for this material. It's all done by individual people, associations, and so on. Now, the New Brunswick Cemeteries Act was established in 1956 and fell under the Department of Health because of potential health issues. That act has to be updated and preferably placed under the Department of Finance and Consumer Affairs. The New Brunswick Cemeteries Association has been working faithfully and diligently for a number of years to make this change. But they're asked, you can imagine if it's under the Department of Health. There's nurses, there's hospitals, there's public health, there's mental health. You can imagine where cemeteries is on their priority list. So we would urge you as a council, when you have the opportunity, to speak with local or provincial government representatives to deal with this lack of proper legislation. For instance, some of the legislation, there's nothing there that governs. For instance, if somebody collects money for the care and upkeep of the cemetery and somebody absconds with it, there's not even a rule in the act to deal with anything like that. There's no rule to say how this money is to be, the cemeteries committee established that when you bury somebody and you have to pay for that burial, a certain portion of that opening of the grave has to go to perpetual care. There's nothing in the act to make sure that that money is going there. On and on and on it goes. And every person deserves to be remembered and their monuments be maintained. Within the area of the town of Salisbury, there are 27 cemeteries in your municipality. And I am sure that many of you have ancestors and loved ones buried there. An individual can make a difference. Whenever your loved ones and ancestors are buried, the need to respect their past, promote their history, become involved, make sure there is responsible management, responsible record keeping, and funding for perpetual care. I know that the three of us here, Doug, who's with the Wesley, and he's sort of a come from away guy, but he has a long history. He's got a long history with being associated with the cemetery. And Mr. Crosby, Pine Hill. Pine Hill is a well and responsible group of individuals, and there's rules and regulations.
Oh, absolutely is, yeah.
And Colpitts is the same. But there's a good many that aren't. And as individuals, certainly we can all do our part to become involved. As a girl of 9, I spent the summer with family members where the Colpitts Pioneer number 2 cemetery is. And I was always intrigued with these lovely tombstones and so on that were down there, and now have been washed away down into the brook. But there was one that had an epitaph, and I remember going there and memorizing it. And it said, "Remember me when you pass by, young as you are, so once was I, and as I am, so you must be. Prepare yourself to follow me." And I've always remembered that. But our ask tonight, you're probably going to say, so what's your ask? And this is our ask. We would request that Salisbury Council help to spearhead a request for assistance in repair and restoration of that cemetery. That, when you think about it, Salisbury's only had habitation for 250 years. And yet that cemetery is 224 years old. So, and that's where the town of Salisbury was at one time. It was not always on this side of the river. It was over there on that side of the river. And so was the Baptist church until then the Post Road came through, the Fredericton Road came through, the Transcontinental Railroad came through, and of course, this was the place to be on this side of the river. So there's almost no existence of a town ever having existed over there, except for the cemetery. And unless some of this work is done immediately, the future of some of the stones and markers and so on, it is gone. We're going to need both federal and provincial donations. Doug, you were a spearhead for the work done down at the Coverdale. Anybody that drives down the Coverdale Road and knew of the cemetery that's there, the old one right beside the church, in as bad condition as across the river. They got grants from where?
Well, I think the official title is Regional Development Fund. There are many other names that it's called, but we were successful in getting 3 grants from them, totaling $13,000, 5, and 3. And there is a company called Monument Man out of Penobscot, Jimmy Vanderbrand, who started the firm back about 6 or 7 years ago and rehabilitate cemeteries. And he goes from end of snow in March until beginning of snow in December, travels all over the Maritimes. And he went in and did that one. And that one is a fair comment that it was in pretty well the same decrepit shape that the Pioneer Cemetery is across the river. And put them back together, took the stones out of the ground, drilled them, glued them, cleaned them up. And well, the results you see today, it's beautiful.
It's amazing. And that picture there, the one that's gated, okay, the far left one, upper left-hand side, there's a Tingley buried there, a Shirley Tingley. I don't know who the others are here, but you can see that the one that's laying down on the right-hand side, the mowers just drive over that. And that's not the only one, several of them. Anyway, this is such a connection to Salisbury's history that if we could just get the support of council, and I would think that the Atlantic Baptist Association, because of Mr. Crandall and others, that, if we can get enough important people like council, like the Atlantic Baptist Federation and so on behind this, I would think that our future of trying to get funding may look good. So that's our ask today. And our other ask is for those cemeteries that are struggling, I would never come to you and ask for monies for them, but maybe on occasion, when tombstones, if people are gonna try to do something to their cemetery and they need to level some ground and straighten some tombstones, a load of topsoil and some crushed rock would be a big, big help. That's the number two, the two items that are most often needed. So without further ado, unless there's any questions,
Could be a third aspect, not Bonnie, though, the Cemetery Act,
pardon?
the Cemetery Act as well. Would you like us to advocate on behalf of that for the province?
Well, yes, but the only way you can do that really is to, when you're an MLA or, you know,
We are the most level of government that can advocate the MLAs as well as for the union of municipalities to advocate government. on
It
behalf
would
of
be-
citizens if the
it would-
council needs to do it.
who would, I would think to get in touch with, Valerie.
Well, Valerie Trayer is the president, but you know, whoever the MLA blossoms up next week, that would be the person to.
And like annually, Connie, we bring our resolutions to the union municipalities that are all municipalities in the province. Bring resolutions to advocate government. Now, council would have to obviously look at that for sure, but it's like compelling, you told a compelling story tonight. I can't imagine why we would want to look at that. I mean,
Well, there's urgent need, to get that act changed to protect, those people who are trying to, have monies put aside.
I can certainly
for-
promise to talk to council about that one, because I do think it's a great thing for us to talk about. I don't want to speak for council, it's not fair for you to do that, but.
Service for all to me.
But, yeah,
We can talk about
and we all already had a roundtable discussion
Yeah.
about this. It's something that we've already been thinking about.
Yeah,
So great
exactly.
for you that you did the presentation,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
we've had a roundtable discussion about it already.
Wow. Yes,
So
wonderful.
we can break this up into three parts and
Yes.
move forward what we can. We're really, and you will never be forgotten, by the way. Just want to let you know that. And, thank you very much.
Actually, to tell the truth, I just have my sister came to visit me one day and I had a stone put in the Colbert Cemetery and it's flat on the ground, which is a big mistake.
Yes,
And she knocked on the door and she said, as it says, Constance-Berry Colbert, Joe, born such and such a date. She came in and she said, I just came to check you were still.
Bonnie, I wanted to thank you on behalf of council. Well, Jonathan and Doug for coming. This is what Salisbury 250 is all about, as well as preserving our history. So having you come forward with that is very important. And anybody that's watching the recording tonight, if they have ideas on preserving our history, that is what Salisbury 250, when we first started this, was to bring people forward to talk about our history, preserve our history, and tell those stories. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
I did have a quick question.
Oh,
Do you have a cost estimate of what it would cost to restore
uh,
your cemetery?
the cemetery, Doug, is 4 times the size of the one at Coverdale. You're probably talking $50,000 to $75,000. And I'm one of these people that doesn't come in with the small bid.
You're talking over at the Pioneer,
Yeah,
you probably could do that for $5,000 to $7,000.
what?
That's what we spent down in Coverdale. We spent about $7,000 to do what was done there.
No,
But it's been a couple of years, I imagine, since I've done,
there's,
3 years ago.
so double that for today's.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you could get it done personally for anything less because of the size of it. It needs a new sign.
Yeah.
Guess what they've done with the sign? The government came through and bushwhacked. And
Beat it all up.
no, they didn't beat it up because it was already beat up. And if here's the cemetery and here's the Salisbury back road and there's the Grub Road, the sign used to sit like this so that you could see it from wherever, okay? They've now tucked it and put it up here. The only way you can see it is if you're driving from the Petticoat, from the River Glade area, through to Salisbury. But anyway, yeah, it needs a new sign, it needs new everything.
It's relative to the scale of what you're trying to accomplish for restoration. If it's all back to original shape versus,
You'll never get it back.
exactly, it's not possible. The cost would not be
Well,
reasonable.
there's so many stones that need to be pinned. They all need to be, the ground, the total area of the cemetery needs to be leveled and landscaped and so on.
Okay.
And Monument Man and his wife are really dedicated individuals. They do a marvelous job. Anyway, I thank you.
Thank you very
I
much.
do have one question as well.
Oh,
Do you know, for our more modern cemeteries, is our record keeping better or is it at risk of falling into the same state of some of these older ones?
well, to answer that, when you say the modern cemeteries, are you talking
Think
about?
like Pine Hill, where we're currently using.
I think the record keeping down there is probably excellent.
It depends on the age of it though.
Yeah.
The more recent, all that, yeah, very well.
Yeah,
I have to say on behalf of Pine Hill Cemetery though, that without Carol and Lawrence Wortman, that would be a different story altogether. And the problem is that we're all volunteers and we're all getting old.
and there's no one stepping up to take our place.
Going like
Succession
30
planning.
by there, and I think I'm maybe a year younger than they are, so it's not much of a help.
At Colbit's, we had an angel from heaven drop in the form of an ancestor of parents that were buried there and wanted to make some kind of a rather pricey donation. And thanks to Gloria Matthews, who herself was a Colbit's, she came up with the idea that there's a Pioneer #1 cemetery and a Pioneer #2 cemetery. One is on the floodplain behind the Lawrence Colbit's property in Colbit Settlement. It's almost impossible, other than to see that there's stones there and they're into the ground. And the other one, just like I mentioned, where the Remember Me As You Pass By, the brook has eroded the bank and all of that is down over the hillside. But before that happened, Gloria was able to get all the names of the people buried in the Pioneer 1 and then in the Pioneer 2. And at the top of the cemetery in Colbit's, there's a huge big monument listing all the names of the people from 1 and 2. So at least we're lucky enough that that's not going to be forgotten.
There's a memorial.
Yeah,
If I could explain perpetual care. The perpetual care, you don't spend the money that's put there for perpetual care. What you can spend is the interest. You have to invest that and then you can spend the interest.
yes.
When the interest rates, we had a GIC that came in, I think it was less than 1%. So it's pretty hard to have any operating.
Our mowing cost, which is the #1 cost for a cemetery.
Yeah.
For the two of them in Coverdale, it jumped from $3,000 to $6,000 this year. And it's a pain in the butt to go mow around a cemetery. We gotta watch the stones, all that stuff, and people are not trying to do it. And it's a big job, like to mow that cemetery alone takes about 3 hours, mow the big one. So,
And ours doubled in price in the last year too. But there's a good many cemeteries that are being maintained just by volunteers, like the Middlesex Cemetery and some of those. Some of the people that live nearby and so on, they take turns mowing and they get together and they can do with all the help they can get. Anyway, we've taken enough of your time.
Thank you very much, very insightful.
Thank you very much.
I'm delighted to hear that
There's been conversation.
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. Let's move on to
Come on
Pete,
to
take care.
Oh, I thought me.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 7.
Oh, she's coming. Oh, I see.
Let's move on to item number 7, reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings. Number 1, recommendations from Committee of the Whole, September 23rd, 2024.
So we have 3 items coming out from Committee of the Whole. As per usual, I will read the short background, and then there will be a recommendation on the floor. So the first one, all of these, like the mayor alluded to at the last committee of the whole meeting. So the first one is the Salisbury Fire and Rescue honorarium policy. And background. During the committee of the whole meeting of September 23rd, Town Council reviewed a proposed honorarium policy for the Salisbury Fire Rescue Department. This policy provides a consistent framework and formula that governs the annual honorarium for volunteer members. This policy has two primary elements, role-based premiums, and then the remaining disbursements being granted based on points, which are allocated based on training attendance and call attendance. And in the spirit of encouraging attendance at training, the town has allocated additional points for attending the weekly training. The honorarium policy was presented at an officers meeting for the department on September 30th. No change requests were made during that consultation. And then one element that was requested of council is to confirm that there was no members that would receive less under the new model. If we use the new amount and the formula is based on last year's attendance, there is one member who would receive a total of $2 difference, but that is based on attendance, and that member has seen more attendance this year. And then the closest ones after that see an increase of 92 and 96 respectively, again, based on last year's attendance. And then the other piece that council has asked is honorarium budget amounts in comparable departments, which is just being finalized and is going to be part of the budget book that council will get next week. And with that, there is a recommendation on the floor.
I'll move that council ratify the Salisbury Fire Rescue honorarium policy.
So moved by Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Second up, also related to the fire department, Salisbury Fire Rescue Member Manual. So background, on September 23rd, Town Council was presented with a proposed member manual outlining organizational policies, role responsibilities, expectations, benefits, etc. All very fun things. For members of Salisbury Fire and Rescue. This manual reflects comparable elements of the town's employee manual for full-time employees. Similar to the honorarium policy was discussed at the officers meeting on September 30th. No changes were requested at that time. No further changes have been made to the manual other than formatting and also reflecting a more realistic performance evaluation method for the department, which is basically on an as-needed basis based on performance or attendance, but also based on at the requested members that wish to move up in different ranks of the department. So with that, recommendation on the floor.
I'll move that Salisbury Fire Rescue Member Manual be ratified and that the CAO be authorized to make regular updates as necessary insofar as they do not have financial implications, at which point authorization from council shall be required.
Second.
So moved by Councillor Thorne. Seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Last but not least, the PMHP or Provincial Municipal Highways Program. Background, on an annual basis, the town must submit an updated 5-year plan for the PMHP program. It's a cost share program whereby the town pays 25% of costs and the province pays 75% for certain eligible items on provincial highways. This applies only to the former village boundaries, given all road responsibilities in the former LSDs remain the responsibility of the province. Following acceptance of the plan at committee of the whole, it was submitted to the province by the deadline of September 30th. And for official ratification purposes, we are also bringing it to a regular council meeting as a formality. So with that, recommendation on the floor.
I'll move that the document entitled Salisbury 5-year plan for the PMHP program 2027 to 2031 be adopted.
Second.
So moved by Councillor McWeenus, seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions of the motion?
So how does this responsibility for the roads in the former village apply to the Quad MB stuff going on?
None of that applies because this is all for
I understand that,
capital.
but I'm saying if we have the responsibility for the former village roads, does that mean some of that Quad NB ask allows to happen in the former village only?
No, both of them need highway use permits on these roads too, because the province still owns them. It's just that to expedite work, because they know how fast they move, they make us cost share. And the more you cost share, the more appetite they'll give to give money to make the projects happen. But those are still provincial roads. It's just this program, if we cost share, they'll expedite it's basically resurfacing is what it is.
So pay to play.
Exactly. Exactly. Their favorite game. Yeah.
Give me a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Reminded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 8, report from administration. Item number 1, LSD Local Service District's waste collection bridge contract update.
So this is more of a verbal update than anything. Council was provided some numbers yesterday, and the long story short is that we're still working with the province to determine what actual implications may be, and by that, if the province will pay for their error that was made. But as council knows, we're going into a time period where we'll be in between 2 waste collection contracts, both are former LSDs and the former village boundaries. The former village was negotiated directly by the municipality with the hauler. The Service Commission negotiated for the LSDs in the region for those that are participating in the new regional waste collection contract that will take effect in February. The province came back and said, what are we, 9 months, 10 months, I guess, by the time we heard that the numbers they gave us a year ago are not actually the full contract price that they are paying, which is the number that we have in our budget, which means that for the bridge contract, we will go over on our waste collection budget areas for the former LSDs, or base what's budgeted for the former LSDs. So as a formality, we're informing council of that, but we will keep council updated based on the appetite of the province, or the willingness, I should say, to pay for that difference. We'll adjust our projections accordingly, and aren't concerned at this point, other than it's $50,000 that could be spent somewhere else. Obviously, that goes without saying. But this, we were only made aware of that it was an error last week formally, and we'll keep council apprised, but wanted it basically on the record that we had to confirm the waste needs to be collected when the contract expires. So we will figure out how we chase the province for that afterwards, and we'll keep council apprised of that. If I find the silver lining, it means that the waste collection for the regional waste collection contract is actually only about a 7% increase, as opposed to what it was, based on the numbers the province is paying right now that they haven't shared with anybody, despite many requests. So to find the silver lining, it means that that is about 7%, I think, is the number that was shared with us today, as opposed to, I think it was 16, or I forget exactly what it was off the top of my head, but it is less now. So to find the silver lining, that's what that means. And we'll chase the province for that chunk of change.
Can you just invoice them? Small claims court?
We did, that's what we're gonna do. If they don't answer us, we'll invoice them and see what happens. Yeah.
It's a very weak silver line.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the positive in it.
If we are on the hook for this additional income.
Yeah.
Or expense.
Yeah.
Is there that much wiggle room in the ward specific former LSD areas to cover it?
The expression of it's, I use this expression today when someone asked me a kind of somewhat related question, is it's kind of like a marriage. We set the tax rates based on subunits, but all the money goes in one pot and is given to us in one monthly check from the province. So it will probably mean that it will be eaten by some, because unless the province gives us the breakdown, we have no idea what LSD is more. We have no idea.
Because we don't really have the variable spending in the former LSDs that we have in Ward 3.
It would be, depends on what, the only real former village specific costs are in transportation, which we don't have a lot of variable kind of budget lines in. We have ones that are, some are over, some are under, but there's not really much wiggle room per se. Not to lay out our argument for an argument for the province, but technically we received almost that much in PPP payments this year. So it will almost be a wash, but there's other options and other arguments that we'll make to them, but we'll find a way to pay for it. Is it going to be broken down specifically by LSD? No. We'll figure out what that looks like and what the overall impact will be when we know.
That's okay. We're all a happy family.
The LSDs can just bring the garbage to Ward 3. It's not an issue. It's short.
Look at the revenue that's coming from the LSDs to pay for the current boundary, so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that update. Let's move on to item number 9, bylaws.
This evening.
All right, so let's move into the next item, item number 10, closed session. contractual 68(1)(c) of the Local Governance Act. Land 68(1)(b) of the Local Governance Act. Do I have a motion to enter into closed? So moved by Councillor Colwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gallant. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. We'll now enter into closed. Do I have a motion to enter back in regular council? So moved by Councillor Colwell,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 11, Mayor and Councillor statements and inquiries.
Excuse me.
I have nothing. Does any councillor have anything?
Not today, no.
With that, we'll move on to item number 12, notices of motions and resolutions. Item number 1, agreement of the Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, with local governments 2024 through 2020 to 2033, Salisbury.
So as council knows, we get a 5-year allotment under the formerly known as gas tax or CCBF dollars. The 5-year allotments come under a 10-year agreement. They need to be signed between the province and the feds, which has been signed, and now the municipalities must sign an agreement with the province. And nothing is new other than the terms that we need to provide a plan as we always have, which council approved in principle at committee of the whole last month, and will approve fully when we approve the budget, whenever that may be, based on tax-based numbers. But this is just the agreement to receive those funds and how we can spend them and our reporting requirements, and so on and so forth.
Big about your tax base.
Yeah.
Not bitter at all.
I move that ratify, that doesn't even make sense.
That council ratified?
That council ratify the agreement between the government of New Brunswick as represented by the Minister of Local Government and the town of Salisbury for the agreement on the Canada Community Building Fund 2024 to 2033.
Seconded.
So moved by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? Seeing no questions, all in favor?
Okay.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 2, emergency mutual aid agreement.
So in the spirit of regional collaboration, as we have been hearing lots, the EMO contacts for actually not just our commission, but the Kent Commission as well, have been having regular discussions. And one of the discussions revolved around how formerly the tri-community have an agreement in place to share resources or even personnel if needed. So a case like this would be if there were a severe flood in Salisbury, as opposed to calling on contractors, we can call on any municipality in this agreement to assist with personnel and resources. We would pay for fuel. And that's the gist of it. They would have the right to say, no, we also had a flood and we can't support that. But a good example is last year, the city of Moncton sent crews to the island after one of the hurricanes. A lot of their parks laborers were sent over to the island. So it's a frequent thing that you'll see in the utility world. MB Power, the other utility companies, you'll often see them mobilize for storms. So this is a formalized agreement that every municipality has indicated their intent or willingness to sign on pending council ratification, which we're looking at this evening. It is very similar to if we owned an asset, and then or just general principle, if you use something and break it, you have to fix it. And municipalities have the right to say no again if they also have a flood or they're also short-staffed. In our world, the reality is that it's not like we have a ton of equipment or people we would be able to loan out. So this is more of us as a beneficiary than anything. But that's the premise of the proposed agreement. It was written by the city of Moncton's legal staff. We had comments on the insurance side of things, which has since been integrated. And we have no further concerns from a staff side. And like I said, the other municipalities have signaled an intent to bring it to council for ratification either last month or this month. So with that, there's a recommendation, and then we can answer any questions.
Move that council enter into the emergency mutual aid agreement between participating municipalities in the Southeast Regional and Kent region. and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement and affix the corporate seal.
So moved by Councillor Lenis, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions to the motion?
I think it's lovely.
And this is separate from the fire mutual aid.
Oh, yes, yeah, this is for like if an EMO is activated.
I think it's moved, I think so.
I will pass along those kudos to the MBMO team.
Additional questions?
Makes them feel better.
Yes, yeah. A lot cheaper.
Yeah.
You can say that. In the unfortunate event that something were to happen, this is good to have. Yeah.
All in favor? Reminded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 3, FCM Federation of Canadian Municipalities Agreement, Project CPC 23-0203/Fire Hall.
So as council knows, we have applied to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. As with any funding agreement, we have to be cautious with what we share on public record, but we cannot sign the agreement without ratifying it on public record. Once it's signed, we work with FCM to announce all of the exciting details, but this is the formality of the agreement of that funding program that we're looking for. There's two motions, two motions. One is to, as we often see with the agreements, sign and fix the seal. And the second one is to authorize Diane and I to submit claims. So they request a specific motion because some municipalities or regional municipalities are structured differently. So while that would be the case with any other agreement, we need a motion from council for this specific agreement.
I'll move that council ratify the agreement between Salisbury and Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, for project number CPC -23-0203, building a net zero ready fire hall in Salisbury, New Brunswick, and affix the corporate seal thereto.
Seconded.
So moved by Councillor Dexter, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? Seeing no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Reminded? No?
Chosen.
Okay. Motion carried. Moving on to item number 4, residential.
Wait,
We have another motion. Yeah.
Oh,
I move that council pursuant to the agreement between the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities and the town of Salisbury for project number CPC 23-023, Austin Henderson, Chief Administrative Officer, and Diane Ailes, Clerk Treasurer, be authorized to sign on behalf of the municipality to sign on behalf of the municipality a request for loan distribution and or a request for grant contribution provided for in the agreement. Sign the agreements, certificates, and other instruments provided for in the agreement, and take, do, sign, or execute in the name of the municipality any other action required or permitted to be taken, done, signed, or executed under the agreement and under any other agreement to the municipality in a party.
Seconded.
Wow, that's covering everything.
You can tell that it wasn't written by us, and it's a lawyer that took time to write that.
moved by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No
Let's
questions?
get the money.
Yes.
Check. All in favor?
Aye.
Reminded? Motion carried.
It'll be good to be able to let the community know.
People are gonna come with a nice ribbon and cameras for
Yeah.
that, yes, yeah, which I expect as soon as it's signed, we'll hear from the comms team shortly after.
Okay.
And we have one more in this section.
Oh.
So the last one is on proposed residential subdivision agreement number 2, which is the completion of a technically phase 1, but it is also phase 2 because it's been, there's a new agreement, and we required things like as-bills to be submitted. That is the standard templated subdivision agreement with a cost-sharing arrangement that is the interim between our financial incentive program that will be rolled out next year. So with that, there is a recommendation on the board.
I move that council ratify residential subdivision agreement number 2, Hopper subdivision, and authorize the clerk mayor to sign and affix the corporate seal accordingly.
Seconded.
So moved by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Dexter, sorry, Deputy Mayor Bland. Questions to the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Excited.
So with that, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank everybody for the good evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I tried to give you a chance there. All in favor? Aye. Reminded. Have a great evening.